Abram was 99 years old. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am El Shaddai, the God who is enough. Walk before me and be blameless, and I will give my covenant between me and you, and I will multiply you tremendously. And then it says, Abram fell on his face. Now, if you want to understand what happens here, we have to see it. You can see it today when you see multitudes of Muslims praying. They go down on their knees first, and they go down and fall on their face. But actually what Abraham does is much more. He falls down on his face, and he gives up all self-control. He gives up the possibility even to see. He can't do anything anymore. And this is the position he gets into. And at that point, it says, God talked to him and said, look, my covenant is with you. You will be the father of a multitude of nations. No longer shall your name be called Abram. Names in the Bible have a meaning. And as you read a biblical text, it's always good to pay heed to what the names express. They say something about an identity of the human being before God. Or it says several times, it's mentioned in the Bible, in the Old and in the New Testament, that there's a book in heaven where God records names. It actually says that the creator of heaven and earth not just created some ants on the ground or some, I don't know, some dust that's alive, but he knows by names each and everybody. Having a name, each and every person stands unmistakably before God. And think about it, your name is the only thing you may take into the afterlife. If Scripture gives names to people, they're sometimes connected to a certain event, or they express a character of a human being, or sometimes they are a commitment or a confession to an action of God, or they anticipate something in a biography. There's something like a program of life. Now God says, and I'm reading here in verse 5, no longer shall your name be called Abram, rather your name shall be, or I say it in Hebrew, it's not Avram anymore, but Avraham. For I have made you a father of a multitude of nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful. I will make you into nations. Kings shall come from you. The interesting thing is that what God does is he simply puts an hey, you would say H in English, into the middle of the name. He makes from Avram to Avraham. And one interesting observation is that God, today, the hey is an abbreviation for God's name. And actually what God does is he puts in the center of Abraham's name his own being, his own name. But what it makes in terms of meaning, Avram means high or lifted up or elevated or outstanding father. And now he makes him not just an outstanding father, but a father of a surge of nations. Maybe this was meant when God promised in Genesis 12 verse 2, I will magnify your name. I make it even greater than it was before, even more significant. Abram, by becoming Abraham, becomes the father of lots of nations. And some rabbis, for example, see that other nations will join him, that there will be proselytes, There will be people who are pagans before, and now they join the God of Israel. And they join the God who accompanies, goes with Abraham and binds himself to Abraham. It's a crowd that comes with him. But Samson Raphael Hirsch, for example, a German rabbi of the 19th century, he observes something else. He says here the father, the Av, becomes an Ever. Again, I have to teach you Hebrew here, and it's not just a father, it becomes a limb, it becomes a part of a body, it becomes a tool. And Samson Raphael Hirsch sees in that God says, I'm not just using you with the nations, I'm not just making you the father of a lot of nations, I'm using you, I'm making you the tool with which I move nations. If I want to work with nations as God, I use Abraham, I use your descendants as a tool. All this is contained in this name. So I hope I gave you a glimpse to ponder that name even more and to pray about it. God consciously incorporates here also Sarai into the conversation and in his dealings with Abraham, because also she gets a new name. It's in verse 15, it says, further God spoke to Abraham, as for Sarai, your wife, she shall not anymore be called Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. Sarai might be the outstanding, or somebody say the modest, or the authoritative. In any way, it's the outstanding, and there must be some modesty in it. Today, the meaning of the name is that she's a princess or a ruler. In modern Hebrew, it would be a minister in government. Some rabbis here emphasize that Sarai didn't have to become that, she was it already. And interestingly enough, also with the name Sarai, God adds an hey, and putting it at the end, the name does, or the hey does something else. It gives a word a direction. For example, if I'm talking about a house, some house, I say bait. And if I say I go home, I go to a specific house that is my home, I say in Hebrew habaita. I put two heys, one in front and one at the end, to make it very specific. So in these names, something very crucial happens. And I do want ending, quote again Samson Raphael Hirsch, who has a very fine, very exact and very unique feeling for language. And he summarizes what happens with the change of these names. He said, without the spirit of Abraham, the masses of the nations are Hamon. They're just a crowd that boils and foams and pounds without direction or orientation. They come, nobody knows from where. They go, nobody knows where. Their movement lacks standard and target. That's the nations as we see them. Without Abraham, the nations are nothing but disoriented, disorderly, just a mass of people. But the moment God uses Abraham and Sarah into these nations, He gives them direction. He gives them a focus. He guides them towards a goal.